Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about knowing your customers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how important is understanding who your customer is as a developer? I'm not referring to just the general customers that's buying the product because it may be supporting designers or a product owner or whoever. Uh, Based on my understanding of your question, you're basically asking me how important it is to know the people who are going to use or like interact with your system in some way. That's my interpretation at the very least. So here I usually say to people that, again, everybody's favorite statement, it depends, which of course it always does, but I'll try to be a little bit more concrete than that. What I like to say is that the goal is to understand how to build the right system. Now, what I mean by that is that this idea, especially some managers who I think don't really understand sort of what we're going for, in my opinion at the very least, because they will say things like, "Oh, you should sit down with customers and you should talk to them and you shouldn't understand them and you should like do learning sessions with them and things like that." And I go, "Yeah, absolutely, if that is what is necessary in order to improve the product." In many cases, it might help you to a certain degree, but the thing that you're going for, which at least from my thoughts on it, are at least that it's a broader thing than that. I'd like to say that that it's not about just understanding the customer. It is about understanding how to get to a result that is ideal for the situation. Because a classic one, which if you go and talk to any of the UX designers, I promise you, if they've done any type of like user journeys or like studies or so forth with users, they will very quickly tell you that a lot of users don't really know what they want. A lot of users don't really know what's going to work and what's not going to work. It's not as easy as just going to a customer and say, "Hey, what should I build for you?" That's not going to, in many cases, yield all that much. So this is why I say that it's a bigger problem than just understanding your users or asking them for feedback. It's about understanding the needs that they have, and this goes sort of hand in hand with my favorite saying, which is don't listen to what people say, look at what they do. That's the thing you're going for. So to give you a concrete example, you know how you might have friends. Classic one is they're saying that, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick up the violin or I'm gonna start going to the gym or things like that, and you know them, you've known them for years, and you know that, yeah, that's probably gonna stick for a week or something like that. What's happening there is that you're not just listening to the words that they are saying, you know them well enough to know what's actually going on. You have a higher understanding of their needs or of their behavior and things like that, and that is the thing that I'm going for. Behavior, understanding behavior and understanding how that behavior correlates into efficiency and happiness and all the end results that we're looking for. That's the key element that every single software developer needs to understand. I would go as far as to say that that's what every single business has to understand about whoever's buying their product. And that behavior that I'm talking about can only be learned, one part by looking at, sort of what are people asking for, what are they saying, and one part on looking at like actual results. You make an experiment or you create something and you see how well does this thing fit, because usually the way it goes is that you build something that sort of seems to be the thing that your customers want or whoever is making the requests, and then they realize that, oh shit, there was A, B, and C that I wanted as well, and then you build another thing, and this is how systems usually grow, right? And scope creep and all this good stuff comes from. You're just increasing, adding stuff, right? And so for sooner or later you're going to have that magical moment where you have one group of people saying we want to do this, and the other people say no, we don't want to do this, we want to do that instead, and now you have more than one like perspective to take in, right? And this is the stuff that you as a software developer really need to know, in my opinion at the very least, because the fundamental truth that a lot of software developers have, well, it seems to be difficult for people to understand in my opinion at the very least, how knowing what you're trying to achieve affects the code that you write. Because it's sort of like coding blind. If you don't really know what would be like, what is the ideal end state, what are you trying to achieve, it's very difficult for you to design software that fits very nicely into any type of long-term goals. Because like, if you're just there, if your mindset is that I'm just going to ship this story, well, then you're going to make a set of assumptions about the work, because you have a very narrow understanding of the problems. You're just going to do the thing that seems right without any context, and then that's like the next deliverable for you. But then if you're unlucky, it turns out that actually the assumptions that you made, the models that you created, or the domain that you designed within your software, your application, it doesn't really fit all that well with the realities and practicalities of whatever the user is dealing with. So now your model isn't really a good representation of their problems. Now the problem is that now you have to ship the next thing, and your model isn't really working, or your system design isn't really, because as I've said before, guys, in essence what you do as a software developer is that you're taking a process or some type of problem and you're trying to model it in code. And in other words, if you don't really understand that problem, and you don't really understand what sort of structures are necessary to make that a really efficient, streamlined experience for people, you're going to model it, but the model is going to be really, really shit. And if the model is shit, the system will become clunkier and clunkier as you go along. And this is what you usually see in these behemoth systems. I like to say that my favorite observation in a lot of software companies is that the intention for us as software developers is to automate and simplify and streamline things. And in many cases I find that you have systems that basically forces the human to do more work, because you've created a shitty system, and now the human has to take over the responsibility of bridging the incompetence of the people who designed the system. So what I want you to take away from this is that I do believe that it's critical for software developers to know their customer, but I want to broaden their perspective more than that, because it's not just about doing interviews with people and getting to know what they want. It is about understanding what good results will look like, and that's bigger. It means that you can't just think about the user. You might have to think about the product owner, the whole delivery pipeline, upcoming goals. How does the company actually structure things? Because you might have people asking for features that you're never going to be able to ship in this environment, because things are not working with people in a certain department, or you have dependencies, or the existing system is already designed in such a way that it makes it impossible to make the perfect solution. But maybe if you're a little bit innovative or enterprising, you can figure out a good enough solution that sort of fits the bill and things like that. It's more dynamic than just saying, hey, you talk to the users. And when you understand that what people say is just one part of fixing this problem, the other part is to observe how they actually behave and have a bigger perspective of the context that you find yourself in, then if you really have mastered that, you will more often than not, I argue, write better software, because your software is now being written not by someone who just knows how to write software. It's being written by someone who understands what the domain that you find yourself in, and all the people and the stakeholders, like what are all these moving variables around you doing, and how do they usually behave. And now your models and your code will more accurately reflect the needs of that context. Have a great day.